Capitalism is the root of all evil.
Everyone effing hates capitalism and it pisses them off, but they don't know that they hate capitalism, so they just complain about every issue individually as if it's some series of unconnected phenomena with no root cause.
So, a lot of young Americans hate capitalism, and that's for a variety of reasons, but today I want to focus on a specific complaint: the cost of living. Shelter, healthcare, education, all of these are considered essential to surviving and thriving in the modern world, and yet they are some of the most expensive commodities and services available to us. We spend most of our lives working to fund our ability to survive, and this has created a lot of resentment among the young class-conscious types. The typical response from outsiders is to mock, shame, and poke fun at the seeming hypocrisy of someone using an iPhone to complain about capitalism. But these young socialists are not completely missing the mark. They've identified a pretty significant problem here, but I think the cause is misdiagnosed. We've been told for years to stop with the avocado toast and the $7 matcha lattes, that our financial woes are entirely on us. But it's not that simple. While America and the rest of the world is far better off than our ancestors were by nearly every metric imaginable, why is it that many things seem measurably worse than they did, say, a few decades ago? How can we have so much and yet own so little that is truly meaningful? The things we want are delivered within a day by Amazon, but the things we need are out of reach and threaten to bankrupt us. Hey everybody, and welcome to Undoctrination. My name is Maggie, and I've made a lot of videos recently about the growing frustration among America's youth regarding things like jobs, housing, raising children, and inflation. But today, I want to talk about 3 key industries where the cost of living is so high that many of us take on decades of debt to fund it. Those are housing, higher education, and healthcare. Many believe these out-of-control industries are the product of capitalism run rampant, and by extension, that socializing the industries, even declaring them as human rights, would solve all of our problems by making them free. And we love free things, don't we? But there's a very basic problem with free, and that is you can't force people to work for free. I doubt anyone's seriously calling for the use of slave labor in these industries, so payment has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere is you. Regardless of how detached you are from government spending is not detached from you. You will pay in the form of taxation and/or inflation for socializing healthcare, higher education, and housing. And the real kicker is that you already are. America is a mixed economy, and we are not the first generation to cry out for help from politicians in DC. But as I hope to illustrate to you in this video, every solution that has been proposed and enacted has made it all catastrophically worse. And the importance of understanding this is so that we don't burden future generations with even worsening conditions because we could not understand the true origins of our discontent. Here's the nasty cycle. Whenever costs get high, complaints from voters prompt the government to come up with some brilliant resolution. Packed in these Frankenstein pieces of legislation are typically subsidies, loan forgiveness plans, and all sorts of regulatory modifications. To put it simply, these solutions typically involve 2 things. 1, they subsidize demand. 2, they regulate the supply. And the irony in this is that both actions have the unfortunate side effect of raising costs. And so each year, the burdens become larger and the cries for intervention become louder, and we see the snowball effect. An ever-growing amount of people are in need of hospital beds, seats in colleges, and homes to raise their families in. And the government has given them even more dollars to do it. But at the same time, the supply has become more costly and sometimes nearly impossible to expand or maintain due to hostile regulatory environments. This is what the Niskanen Center calls cost disease socialism. The industries that are the most subsidized and regulated often are the most expensive. In my opinion, the industry that most exemplifies this issue is healthcare. And boy, does the American healthcare system truly attract the ire and dismay of the world.
Cost of childbirth.
Jesus. 50 grand, something ridiculous now.
100, 200?
Dollars.
Yeah.
The average is about 10 grand. It can go up to 30,000.
10 grand!
for a baby.
And this is not to say that I'm sympathetic to arguments that we should have fully socialized healthcare similar to the UK. No thank you to the insanely long wait lists, substandard care, and lack of medical freedom. The NHS is a mess and is constantly asking for more money from taxpayers. But many Americans look at our healthcare system and feel terrified that if someday we should get sick, we'd be left with a mountain of medical bills.
You know what no one prepares you for as an adult? Medical bills, okay?
In 2019, America spent $3.8 trillion on healthcare, or 17.7% of our GDP. Other developed countries spent on average only 8.8%. And the majority of our spending was publicly financed. It's clear that American taxpayers are already spending an arm and a leg on publicly subsidized healthcare. But what else is making it cost so much? There are a million examples I could go into, but for the sake of time and specificity, let's look at the factors affecting the supply of hospital beds. Because if we want to keep prices low, we'd expand the supply, right? In 2010, the ironically named Affordable Care Act effectively prohibited the establishment or expansion of physician-owned hospitals by restricting their ability to bill Medicare and Medicaid. Not to resurrect a dead meme, but thanks, Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
And at the state level, certificate of need laws require aspiring providers to appear before a board of their competitors to prove an area needs their services. These certificate of need laws are clearly designed to protect already established hospitals and clinics from competition.
The law says you need what's called a certificate of need. Basically, the state says you need to prove to us the service you want to provide is filling some sort of gap in your community.
For doctors, the regulatory environment is even more convoluted. America has less practicing physicians per person than any other developed country in the world. A panic in the 80s and 90s of an impending surplus of doctors caused institutions and politicians to put a moratorium on expanding the number of slots available in medical schools. This artificially constrained the supply of care, as did the rising costs of training, both of time and money. In most European countries, aspiring doctors only undergo 6 years of training. In the US, they have to do 8 years in school and another 3 to 7 years in residency. This amount of schooling, especially with limited seats, is obviously very expensive, and so doctors often seek out specialized fields where they can make more money to compensate for the high cost of training. As a result, America is predicted to have a 122,000 physician shortage by 2032. And these examples are only scratching the surface of the insanely murky, complex corporatist swamp that has created America's healthcare problem. Another great example of socialized cost disease appears in higher education. Like healthcare, Americans are paying far more than our overseas counterparts. In 2016, we spent $31,600 per student compared to the average of $16,200 for other countries in the OECD. American higher education is some of the best in the world. However, is it something we're willing to put our youth into decades of debt over?
The actual chokehold my debt has on me as a 26-year-old with over $100,000 in student loan debt. Like so many other people, my family didn't know anything about money, anything about college. I fully applied to everything on my own, and they encouraged me to take out loans. With Sally Mae, the demonic, evil student loan providers that are always pushing you to take out more.
Her experience is unfortunately not uncommon. Many of us are told from a young age that college is essential for having a good life and well-paying job. That pressure, plus loan availability, has created a surging demand for higher education, even among those who would otherwise not attend. The Higher Education Act of 1965 guaranteed the payment of private student loans by the federal government, which meant taxpayers were the ultimate guarantor. This securitization meant lending institutions had the restraints taken off. The kind of loans which would be unthinkable to give to an 18-year-old in any other context became possible and common. In response, tuition has risen 8 times faster than wages since the 1980s, according to Forbes. Many young Americans see this as the traditional, acceptable path until they've graduated and begin paying off the loans they naively accepted. When they finally encounter the high interest rates and unending debt in reality, it's too much to bear. But the proposed solutions, like forgiving these loans or fully subsidizing college altogether, falls into the vicious cycle we've been discussing. When you make it possible for teenagers to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, colleges charge hundreds of thousands of dollars. There are several supply-side regulatory issues colleges run into as well, which has led to ever-expanding administrative needs, furthering the cost issues. If higher education is mostly a demand-side subsidization problem, housing perfectly illustrates the supply-side regulatory environment that creates rising prices. As I covered in a recent video, the median cost of a home in America has risen from a little over $25,000 in 1971 to an astounding $416,900 in 2025. And what happened in the interim was a combination of inflation as a result of government spending, demand-side subsidization, and an extreme chokehold on supply. There is certainly a high demand for homes, especially the kind of starter homes that we used to build in the 20th century. However, land use regulations and zoning restrictions have made it unprofitable for developers to build these lower cost units. In some areas, it's unprofitable to build at all. What's left behind is a market that has priced out younger generations.
Listen to me. I will never be able to afford a house. I will never be able to afford a house.
And for those who do manage to save up enough money to make a down payment on a modest house, being house poor and broke for several years is expected.
I officially have $0 to my name because I just took out every penny that I've ever saved. And this is on top of the deposit I've already made to buy a house. And wow, down payments are really large and I'm broke now.
As usual with socialized cost-diseased industries, the solution proposed by the affected parties is more government intervention and more subsidization of demand. Will we ever learn? If housing, healthcare, and higher education are out of reach for Americans, and we've been reliably informed that we live in a capitalist economy, is it any shock that they are rejecting capitalism? The dirty secret is that what you hate about capitalism is usually socialism in disguise. A nicer name for it is corporatism or cronyism. But in any case, the solution to our rising cost of living woes is not to do further damage to these rotten industries, but to cut out the infection and let them heal. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I have already made a longer deep dive into the housing issue, but I'd love to make longer videos about healthcare and higher education as well. As an aside, learning why college was so expensive was actually one of the issues that changed my mind on economics back when I was maybe 17 years old. I wish everyone had to learn the history and effects of intervention into higher ed before signing up for student loans. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I can't wait to chat with you in the comments, and I'll see you next video. Ciao!